there's a perception in the market, especially when you speak to logistics operators, logistic managers, director of logistics, even up to a level of CFOs, that the cost ultimately for zero emission deliveries is higher than their current providers. I don't think it is really higher. And then if we are slightly more expensive, then the question is, as a company, what is your initiative to save the planet?
Hello, and welcome to Speaking of Supply Chain, where we explore trends, current events, and innovations impacting the logistics and supply chain industries. I'm your host, Ellen Wood. From the bustling city centers to quiet suburban streets, the demand for swift and reliable deliveries is exploding. But can we satisfy this craving without sacrificing our environment? Let's unpack the challenges and potential solutions in the battle for last mile sustainability. My guest today is Marcus Hoed, co-founder of DutchX, the largest zero-emission last-mile delivery fleet in the U.S., to share his insights. Marcus, great to have you with us today.
Hi, Ellen. Nice to meet you. Thank you.
So before we get into the topic of last mile delivery and sustainability, let's do our icebreaker. And today's question is, what is your favorite way to get in some exercise?
I go into the gym probably like 4, 5, 6 times a week. It's not just for my physical health, mental health. So I think it's for me very important to do this 60 to 90 minutes a day to just let everything go. And on itself, it's not relaxing, but it's kind of relaxing for me.
What do you like to do when you go to the gym? Do you like to do weightlifting, resistance training, the bikes, stair climber?
I think, honestly, I like everything. I really don't have really a favorite there, which is also a problem. I like cardio. I like weights. I try to mix it up. So I do a mix of, honestly, of everything.
My best friend and I go to the gym, not as often as we should, and it's fallen off in the past couple summer months just because it's summer and we're outside a lot, so we haven't been going to the gym. I have a feeling once the weather cools off again, we'll get back into it. But I love going to the gym with a friend because it increases my accountability to actually go. If it were up to me, I would find so many other things that I would rather do. I love to read, so I would sit down and read a book. But with her, I'm willing to make myself go. I haven't gotten really good at exercising to the pace of an audiobook. That doesn't work for me. I have to have music and something inspiring to exercise.
For me, it's harder. I mean, honestly, I like to go or with my wife or by myself. I cannot have people around me because I'm very serious. I'm very motivated, and nobody needs to motivate me or put me off my chair and said it's time for the gym, because I don't think I have this. I don't know, maybe my background.
Yeah, it could be. There's just different people who approach it differently. But yeah, I need some external motivation to go. Now, if it's doing something just like yard work, I will go out and work in my yard and sweat and lift and dig and, work in my garden for hours. And no one has to convince me to do that. But to go into a gym and lift weights, yeah, someone's got to be there to motivate me.
I wish I could say that, but in New York, there's not so much garden. So no, we don't have that luxurious position here, but okay.
All right. So on to our topic, which is last mile delivery and sustainability. So tell us a little bit about DutchX.
So as you mentioned in the intro, we are the largest, only zero emission last mile delivery company, mid mile and last mile delivery company in the United States. So we are really fully working in a zero emission environment. We started the company, what is it now, about 11 years ago, where we imported the traditional Dutch cargo bikes from the Netherlands here to New York City. When I say here, it's New York City. And it came up with some challenges. At that time, first of all, cargo was not really moved by companies outside UPS, FedEx, and from a parcel perspective, let's call it the large four companies who are out there in the market. Number one. Number two was that to do this with bikers did not really exist. It was mostly like the traditional couriers who were going like crazy through New York, where you see all these movies about and doing very rapid, on-demand, speedy deliveries. But it failed. Main reason, there were a couple of reasons why this failed at that time. Was number one reason is the cost of the bike was at that time very, very expensive. They were not available in the United States, so we needed to import them from the Netherlands. Number two, parts were not available. So we had to import also the parts. And then the third part, now you have all the parts, but who is going to maintain and fix the bike? Because there were not really bike repair or maintenance guys out there, or girls, to do this, because it did not exist here yet in the United States. So from there, that part of our operations at that time didn't work. From there, we transitioned very quickly to a much broader walker model, which means that we had walkers on the street who are doing the last mile of the deliveries. At that time, there were no zero-emission trucks or vans. It was all based on fuel-driven trucks, which we had parked across the city, and from there we were doing the last mile deliveries. In 2019, it was kind of the first solution what came out in the market with a bike and a trailer. It was a little bit before that there were already some existing bikes and trailers who could potentially do the last mile, but in our perspective, because safety is key in our operations. So we found in 2019 the first, let's say, more safe environment or safe equipment to start this operation. And that's when we really dived again much deeper into how can we do last mile, mid mile, and last mile parcels in a real zero emission environment. We see this really as we need to change the planet, and we need to do this all together. And this I really feel, and we really feel, and are very enthusiastic. We are really obsessed with everything what has to do with the environment. So where we are now, we have a fleet of events. We have a very small fleet currently still of e-trucks, and this is mostly because of cost and efficiency. And then we have a a larger fleet of e-bikes and e-quads across New York City and the boroughs.
So right now, you're supporting and servicing the New York metro area. What about other geographies? I mean, what are some obstacles that logistics professionals are facing when they're trying to implement similar last mile solutions? Yours is New York. There's density, there's volume of packages that need to be delivered, there's space. I mean, it's very dense, but it's also very large. So, those situations, those obstacles still exist in other geographies. How are they going to overcome them?
I think that I love the question, by the way, very thoughtful. The part is that if you look at the operations, if you take New York City as a city, and you mentioned it yourself, it's a very dense city. So here, the e-bike and e-quad operations, especially in the smaller parcel areas, can work very, very well. Because of the speed, because of the easiness of maneuvering through traffic, because of the density, the amount of stops you have per block, etc. You can get to a relatively very high DPH, which is delivery per hour. And as we are a fully W2 environment, so we only work with we have only employees. We don't have any independent contractors, as well as in our mid-mile as last-mile operations. We need to get to the highest DPH possible. But if you go into the more outliners of New York, and then I'm really speaking about the boroughs as an example, certain boroughs in certain pockets within the boroughs have also quite high density. But the further you go out, the less density you have. And that's where we have been building this multi-mobility solution, hybrid model, where we can utilize as well as light vehicles, as well as events, as well as in certain pockets, as I mentioned before, still the equads. And this is also why we have a multi-mode mobility, because that's the only way it can potentially work in every city. I'm getting reached out by many cities across the United States, especially on a governmental level, from City Hall you mentioned to the DOT, and see what do we need to do to get you guys operating in this particular city. And then for us, it's really working with the density, looking at the city very, very well, looking at the amount of parcels, and then from there building the model out of this multi-modal system of getting still the last mile done in a very efficient and cost-efficient way. There's still it's an interesting point. There's a perception in the market, especially when you speak to logistics operators, logistic managers, director of logistics, even up to a level of CFOs, that the cost ultimately for zero-emission deliveries is higher than their current providers. I don't think it is really higher. It is. We are quite. If I look at the price points that I see from our customers, which they're currently paying with other providers or with us, we are in some cases cheaper. In other cases, slightly more expensive. But it's really slightly. And then, if we are slightly more expensive, then the question is, as a company, what is your initiative to save the planet? Are you willing to pay? I'm not speaking about dollars more. We're speaking about literally like a couple of cents. Are you willing to spend this couple of cents more? And it's really like, and again, what I said before, I would say 80% of the cases, our price points are very similar than their current providers.
Well, sure. And you mentioned something a moment ago. You were talking about the technological angle of this and building the models for what that delivery network could look like in that potential city. So, there's multiple different vehicles. They have to have, you have your KPI of deliveries per hour. So how can some of these emerging technologies really support that route optimization? Are you using AI yet? I mean, these are some of the other, buzzwords that are going around the industry right now. How are they helping your business to really roll out and build up this capability that could be then marketed and deployed in other cities?
Doesn't everybody use AI these days? I don't know. I think that everything, but also everything what you read about technology, it's all AI. I don't even know anymore how do people determine what is AI? But leave that on the side. I think that yes, we're utilizing AI. We have been building together we're using on the shelf, off the shelf. So we have our own technology team, including our own very experienced data team, who are working very closely together. So we're utilizing an off-the-shelf product, customized it to our needs, and then our technology team and data team have been building this further out to really create kind of a solution what can support this multi-modal last mile delivery. Because if you take most of the off-the-shelf products which are out there, they don't keep fully in mind. They're very fuel-driven, but means we also have constraints with the distance. We also have constraints with battery life. We have constraints with battery charging infrastructures. So from those perspectives, within the routing, and I even think within our routing, we build an even more efficient routing tool that can bring us to a higher DPH than most of the off-the-shelf solutions, because we have to be very, very smart about, we call it our ops clock, but then the ops clock of the vehicle, not the ops clock of the operation itself, but the ops clock of what the vehicle can run and what is the mileage this vehicle can do, and making sure that we're not getting stuck somewhere with an empty battery, because that's the worst case. And I knock on wood. Till the day of today, as far as I know, I have to ask my ops team, but as far as I have heard, and I don't have heard any complaints, we never had a vehicle or a bike running out of a battery.
And I'm sure it will happen at some point. But no, that's really interesting that you've had to make some changes and some developments to that off the shelf. Do you think that as a business, that might be where you're able to deploy this, is through a software that it enables this? Or are you only going to focus on the execution of the delivery and not so much the technology? I know that's that's a tough question.
It's a good question. Is it a tough question? I think that we want to, as we are currently in New York, we are expanding to the LA and to the Miami market. I think for us to really start to deploy this technology in a broader way, instead of us just really doing the entire last mile delivery ourselves, I think we need to test this also in different environments than just New York City. We have shown the success in New York. We cover the 5 boroughs, we cover into Long Island, we cover the first line in New Jersey. So our coverage has been growing quite rapidly, and it's working there, or it's working here. I'm in New York. But now it's for us very important also to see that even in more challenging cities, they can take LA. LA is an extremely challenging city. Traffic is out of control. They have just really pockets within the city who are very dense. And then from there, we have our own UCCs, urban consolidation centers, where we are consolidating the products and routing it out of there, batching it, routing it, sorting it, and then it goes out to the last mile deliveries to really strategically position them in those particular cities. And we are there. I mean, we have a team already out in the LA market. So we're planning very soon to start to launch there. It's the same in the Miami market. But these UCCs for us has to be strategically placed, because that's how we get also from that perspective the highest efficiency out there.
Well, and that kind of leads us, and you mentioned something earlier about talking with local governments and, there's interest in this solution in other geographies. So what role do collaborations between, the retailers and, maybe even other logistics providers? You mentioned some of the other, parcel delivery services, or those local governments. What kind of collaboration could enable this to grow significantly? Or conversely, what are those players doing that are making it hard for you to bring this solution to other cities?
I don't think that the other players are making it hard for us. I think there's more a perception perspective, especially on the retail from the retail side, that there is still. It's interesting when you speak to the larger retail partners and companies. They have almost, you speak with 4 different divisions. You have the CFO, or call it the financial area. They're just looking at the number. What is this extra cost? And if the cost is slightly higher, or it's the same or a little bit lower, you see them jumping. If you are the same, they are fine with it. If it's higher, the question is, what can we do to make it cheaper? Then you have the sustainable divisions themselves. Because if you take the let's call it the top 500 retailers in the United States or in the world, a lot of them have their own sustainable division, which is very focused in certain cases on product, on office environments, on their entire real estate. You mention it. When they hear us, they start already jumping from beginning. And they are, in many cases, our biggest advocates within the companies. Then you get the logistics side, where the logistics side is always a little bit more concerned and also conservative. And I can imagine this because when you have been operating for the last 15 years with the same provider, and I don't think that any provider is great besides us. I think that many of them have some lacks and challenges, where I think that we have figured it out very, very well. Besides, what is the need of our customer, which is in this case the retailer, but also what is the need of the consumer, especially in the small parcel or even also in the large parcel world or in the heavy and bulky parcel world. What is this need of a consumer? And what is the visibility that those particular consumers would like to see and would like to have, and also to understand by utilizing this company, a DutchX, what is their benefit from this particular model? And I think that this is where you see, especially on the logistics perspective, there are sometimes some worries, but I can give plenty of references of companies we are working with, and they're like, I wish you guys did this already 10 years ago because it would have made our life easier. It reduces cost also on a customer service perspective because we have much broader and much more visibility to as well as the customer, as well as the consumer. We have many more communication lines out there to almost every single level in the supply chain who can follow and track and trace and everything else in a live environment. And I really see this as some of our other advantages compared to this large 3, 4, 5, however we want to define them, companies in the United States.
Well, and you bring up an interesting point that in the past, 4 or 5 years, the customer expectations have changed drastically since we lived through COVID and had to just change the way we approached being a consumer, whether it buying groceries, buying gas, buying, home goods, whatever. All of that has changed. And the expectation of the customer is, I want it now. And I want you to get it to me, whether it's within an hour, by the end of the day, tomorrow, overnight. I know all of these options are available to me in the city where I live, which is not a tiny city, but it's not New York. And, these customer expectations, that shift is permanent. Like no one's going back to, I'm going to wait, 10 days for a shipment from something that is local. That's unacceptable. So are those demands also not just for the customer service level of receiving their product that they wanted, but for the sustainable activity? And does it matter to the customers that this fleet that brought them their package is carbon neutral, or do they care that it's zero emissions? Does it matter to them, or does it only matter to your customer?
It's interesting. You see, you listen, and everybody has 2050 is the year. Does the consumer really care? I think there's still a lot of education to do, because I don't think that the education here is there as of yet, or really what does it mean and how is the climate changing, how is everything else changing? And we see the climate changing. New York had, I think, the hottest July we ever had. It was every day here, like you could barely go outside. It was steaming hot. Humidity was on extremely high. It was just not nice. And this will only get worse and worse and worse. So does the consumer really care? No. Do I think that the consumer believe that it is an advantage? Yes. Are there many consumers, and do you see at the moment that this number is growing and growing and growing, who are more aware of the environment? Yes, there is, and this number will only grow over the coming years, because things need to change, and I think that the awareness from a consumer perspective is getting there, and we can see it and hear it very, very, very clear. The other thing is, and this is an interesting point you brought up, like you have this speedy, on-demand, quick deliveries. I think as a consumer, from a consumer perspective, and then I'm not speaking about the food side, because I think food, you order 30 minutes and you want it warm, so you order 30 minutes before you want your dinner. And I heard in certain cities it's an hour, but let's say I'm lucky we live in New York and here it's the 20 to 30 minutes. I see this really as an on-demand product, which you need to be as fast as possible. With the large e-commerce sites out there who are almost promising you same day, and in most cases even, or otherwise in most cases next day, I think that this is where you see a lot of retailers, 3PLs and warehouses are still kind of challenging and struggling how to compete with, especially for the, let's call it the smaller brands and also the large companies, by the way. How can we compete with these giants out there who can get it to us like as soon as possible and almost, let's call it same day? Because I think that on demand is extremely expensive, especially in a W2 environment. And I think that the consumer itself should really look at themselves and say, what do I really need right now? But if I need something today, I get that. So we are really, as a company, focused on the same day deliveries, which can be utilized out of a retail location as a fulfillment center to a 3PL or their own warehouse. And of course, the next day, second day, and third day, because this is really where we are focusing on. We do not believe, besides food, don't get me wrong, in this on-demand parcel deliveries, because I think that the cost for this is consumer is not willing to pay for that.
So what are some of the challenges and solutions that are going to be different for New York versus, let's say, a smaller town? Are they going to be able, is there enough demand for a delivery service that they're going to be able to utilize this type of technology and this initiative? Or are there small towns or geographies or areas of our country that are just not going to be able to capitalize on this and make it cost efficient?
I think this is all far in the future, to be honest and fair with you, because then again, it all comes back to density, etc. Do I think that same day delivery in small towns are going to be doable? I don't believe that. I'll be there in an honest way. Next day can become in certain ways challenging in a zero-emission environment, by the way, because of the density. But we, based on the map that we have created internally, we can reach relatively rapidly 60 to 70% of the US population. When we can reach the 60 to 70% of the US population, this ultimately can mean for us that our network gets broad enough from that perspective that we can start servicing the smaller towns, because this will mean that even the less dense areas can be built within the model of the larger areas, which we know we can serve. Will there always be certain areas where, with the current battery and charging infrastructures, with electrifications, which will currently not be reached? Yes, because there are challenges with energy. There is challenges with the distances a van can drive, etc. So currently, can we really cover the US? No. Will we get there? I'm 100% sure, and I'm sure that we will get anywhere in the United States.
That sounds amazing. And I think one of the more interesting initiatives that you've got going on right now, and I was on your website earlier today checking to see if it was still going or if there was any news, and that is your Blue Highway initiative. Tell our listeners a little bit about that, because that may be one of the ways that you get to some of these other geographies.
So it's not really my initiative. It's something that we have been working very, very, I wish I could say that, but no, I have to be honest there as well. I've been working very closely with partners and governmental institutions to see how can we enroll this? How can this be done in a very efficient way? and we are launching, and it's a very, very small, minor test in September to really see from a test perspective, based on small parcels, how is this going to work and how can this work very, very efficient. We are working on creating barges, or not for ourselves, but again, together with the government, to create this broader infrastructure to bring in more parcels into New York City, and do this correct. I think that a fair date, I think 2025, 26, we will have this infrastructure in a broader way out there, because again, if you identify certain territories and certain areas, because even New York City, small parcel deliveries, and then utilizing the waterways, which are the outliners of New York, where, for example, commercial vehicles are not allowed. So you have to start utilizing e-quads and e-bikes in those perspectives. So from there, you need to create the volume and the density to get it out, because if it just a couple of routes, it's interesting, but I think the broader picture is really to build this more last mile, mid last mile terminal infrastructure, where you can sort on one side of the city, which is in this case or Brooklyn, Queens, Bronx, or even the Jersey side, bring it already sorted and routed into containerized solution to the Manhattan market. And we have all these solutions ready, by the way. We can start if we want tomorrow. But there are still, and we also have the clients who are very interested to start operating this. So until we are ready to go, I think there are still more decisions also made on the governmental side. Is where are these barges? Because there are not really cargo barges out there yet in New York. We are working with commuter terminals. The Coast Guard is not crazy about it. Because they don't want to mix cargo and commuters, even though the commuter terminals are post-COVID only 35% utilized. So their utilization went down really a lot because post-COVID, people are not coming all to New York City anymore by ferry or by vessel. So so there are still opportunities we need. Solutions and opportunities we need to work through, but we are very, very, very close to start our operations.
Wonderful. I am going to keep checking on the website to see if there is any more news about that. So I think the last thing is, do you have a customer story or a success, or just, maybe even a failure? Some failures are interesting to hear about, but tell us about one of your favorite stories, something you would tell a potential client that is looking for a parcel delivery solution, and they're comparing vendors, you against the other, top 4, top 5. What would you tell them to try and convince them to go with DutchX?
Well, you asked me, this is a good question. What is our top story? Because I can go back to COVID, but I don't want to go back to COVID. What was it that some of our customers left candies outside for our delivery guys, their kids, and some of the kids, they were getting left notes outside to our delivery associates to say thank you so much for giving us food. I don't want my mom to go outside because I'm scared she's going to get sick. But do we really want to go there? I don't know. It's not something that the only thing what I can say is that because we have the full transparency of the last mile delivery, we have a much higher success rate of fulfilling the last mile and being successful of doing the last mile delivery and not bringing it back because customer was not home or other things. And what we have seen there, and this is not something that I get a compliment for, or it's really like amazing. But that being said, and I just take myself as an example, I don't have time to go to stores. I wish I had. I really, everything we order is online. And for me to know I can expect my parcel tonight, even it's a birthday gift for my son, my family member, whoever it is, my wife. But you mentioned it, and knowing that it's en route and I will get it tonight at 5:41 p.m. This can mean I can be home at 5:41 p.m. I can ask somebody else to be home, but I know that my parcel is arriving the day and the time that I needed to arrive at my place. And I think that this is, I don't want to call it a success story, but I do know that if you have an important gift which you bought yesterday from a website and you expect it to be delivered today, and you want a 98% success rate of your delivery, we fulfill this for you. And you know already from a much earlier time window of what time you can anticipate to receive your package. So you can plan also in that perspective, especially for important parcels, your day to make sure that there will be or somebody home, or you can, whatever needs to be done to receive that particular parcel. And I think that this is, I don't think a success story, but I do believe that we can make more people happy there.
I absolutely think that is a success story and a selling
point. You want me
point.
to rephrase it? Because now I was just speaking out loud, but...
And the marketing person in me says that this is a value proposition, that your accuracy for your routing and on-time delivery is so high that it can be down to a 5-minute window. That's significant. And if you're able to deliver that on a consistent basis, you should be screaming that from the rooftops. Because that's not something that the Amazon drivers do. That's not something UPS does. It's not something the Postal Service can do. If DutchX is able to meet those expectations that are set, you're the one who says when it's going to be delivered. But if you meet that goal, if you meet that expectation that you've given to the customer, that the end consumer, that is going to make a huge difference to all of these retailers that want to work with your company and use your delivery service because their customers want to have their item on time. So I disagree that is not a great story. I think that's a fantastic story.
No, but I thought you were looking more for a real life amazing story instead of bringing up a sales. It's not a sales story because it's true, by the way. It's really what we do, but I didn't know where you were looking for, but that's it. And it is the case, by the way.
Well, I think that is a huge selling point. And I'm sure there are a number of stories that like you were talking about where, the end consumer is just so happy to see that delivery, whatever it is. I'm sure that happens in any number of delivery and parcel delivery industries where, you get delivering flowers or delivering chocolates or, whatever the occasion is, that you're able to meet that person and, have that connection for that brief moment, for that small transaction that is really, in the scheme of things, nothing, but could be something so huge. And so I'm sure there are a number of stories about that. But I think that brings us to the end of our conversation today. Thank you so much, Marcus, for joining us. And
thank you, Ellen.
I had a lot of fun learning more about your company. At first, I thought, okay, it's another parcel delivery service. It's last mile delivery. And the more I read, the more I was interested in the goals that you have and the way you're raising the bar in the parcel delivery service on sustainability measures is incredibly admirable. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for your kind words, and thank you.
If any of our listeners out there have a suggestion for a topic or another guest you would like to see on the show, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact me at podcast@mebach at any time to give us your ideas or to request to be a guest on the show like Marcus. As always, thank you for listening to Speaking of Supply Chain. If you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on whatever podcast platform you prefer. We're on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, Spotify, and a few others now. And be sure to tune in next time.